My name is Jay Bailey. I was born in Fort Huachuca, Arizona in 1959. My family shortly thereafter moved to Mississippi, which is where both my mother's parents lived and my father's mother lived. So I grew up in New Albany. I started my first grade year in New Albany. Went to school here the whole time. And, I went to Maddie Thompson, which is a school up in a real small school, and that was great. That was great. So, but I got involved in liking sports, I guess, from day one. I had two older brothers, and of course they'd beat up on me pretty good, but it came back, paid them back on there. But I used to go up to the football field and watch the high school football team practice when I was just in elementary school. And for some reason, I just loved it. I just loved it. And when I got old enough to play, went through junior high, and when I was in the 7th grade, I was big. I had grown a lot. So they said, well, it's time for you to play on the 9th grade team. So I did, and I enjoyed that even more. And so when I got in the 9th grade, I played on the high school team. And really, really enjoyed it. Made some great friends doing it. And wouldn't trade that for the world. Wouldn't trade it for the world. I wound up going to Ole Miss on a scholarship, even though my high school team went 0-10 my senior year. That was rather remarkable. But one quick story about that. I had decided to go to LSU, and late that night of signing day, I was supposed to sign the next morning. Mother came into my bedroom and sat on the side of my bed and said, please don't go down there with those crazy cages. I said, well, Mom, I already told them I would. And she said, I'll take care of that. She said, just don't go. I said, well, okay, if it means that much to you. So I called the coach from LSU that recruited me and told him I'm sorry, I'm not coming. Then I called the coach from Ole Miss that recruited me, Eddie Crawford. I said, have you still got a place for me? And he said, I'm on my way to your house right now. I said, well, come on. So signed with Ole Miss, and never regretted it. I really, really enjoyed my time there. The thing about college football that makes it distinctly different from anything else is the friends you make. You have the same life. You have to work your tails off at practice and in games every week. And you have to keep up with your homework. And you have to keep up with this and that. It's really demanding, and it's really, really hard. But there was a group of us that were really good friends. And we still are. We've stayed together for a long, long time. I got sick a few years ago, and a couple of my former teammates, unbeknownst to me, wanted to have a prayer circle up at a game in the Grove. And it was awfully odd to see a bunch of guys that you'd raised hell with and all in a prayer circle, but everybody's life changes and moves forward and for a better thing. So it's the relationships that you make along the way that made it so special for me. And it was that way even with my high school guys. As developed some really good friendships and really good relationships and all. But that's really I got hurt at Ole Miss first part of my junior year. And I was never able to play anymore after that. I hurt my shoulder. After multiple surgeries, they just couldn't get it fixed. So that pretty much ended that. I had never thought about doing anything else in my life except playing football. So I really had to back up and punt and think, what are you going to do now? Well, I could have coached, I guess, but football coaches back then didn't make $15,000 a year. I thought, I'm not going to go through 4 years of college and get a degree to make $15,000. No. Biggest mistake, second biggest mistake I ever made. You always should stay with where your heart is. And sports, football, is always where my heart was, and still is to this day. Still is. So I won a lot of awards and all as I was growing up and going through the ages and all that. I never played for rewards. I played for the joy of it and for my friends. And I guess I still would to this day. Don't think I'd do anything different except maybe keep my shoulder from getting tore up. Now one last thing I'll say about that. One of my duties at Ole Miss was to cover punts. Since I was a defensive player, we were, could cover punts. Well, I didn't know it at that time, but Jim Miller, who was an All-American punter from Ripley, just up the road, he was the punter. And he used to be able to tell us exactly where he was going to hit the ball to. Right hash at the 7-yard line. And he'd be within a yard either way. So he told me where they were going, told all of us where he was going to hit it. And I went down and was covering the punt, and Jim could hit it a mile high. And I got down to where I thought I needed to be, and I looked up, and I could see the ball, and then the next thing I know, that up back just destroyed my shoulder. Legal hit, destroyed my shoulder. But ultimately, years later, Jim and I became brother-in-laws. So I lived in Ripley for 25 years, and the whole time I was up there, I was called, that guy from New Albany. So that always struck me as odd. But no, I've made some great friends. I've made some great friends through athletics and through competition. I think through competition, I think you could ask people that played with me. I wasn't dirty. I was just determined. I was just determined, and that's how I was raised. I mean, youngest of 4 kids, and your daddy's in the military. You better be determined. You're going to go hungry. But I had a great childhood in New Albany, and had a great time going to school in New Albany. And I'm proud to say that I'm from New Albany. I lived on Wheeler Avenue, which was the north part of New Albany. My best friend, John Panel, lived across the street from me. And he and I would play baseball in the summers and wiffle ball and things like that. So, but that's part of New Albany I grew up in. That's why I went to Mattie Thompson when I first came here for elementary school. And it was nice to be able to walk to school every day.
Now, what year did you graduate from high school?
77.
In high school, you were playing Kitchens Field?
Yeah. Matter of fact, I helped build that field. Ed Stanley, great friend, his daddy was the coach, Jack Stanley. It was the first year we had it built, made, and me and Ed and 20 other football players laid the sod on that field up there. We were so nice to have a place to play, other than, I think they called it work field, and it was just a big old glass patch. I mean, it's where people threw bottles and all out in there for years and years and years. But we were very happy to be able to move there. Tommy Barkley, he was a tight end, and I thought I would like playing tight end. I think Sammy Buskirk was still playing back then. He was a rough, tumble kind of guy like I was. And there's a lineman named James Harris. It's just guys like that I enjoyed watching that were so much older than me. And of course my brother Bill. So after he got through with high school, he went to West Point Military Academy in New York. And he didn't stay up there the whole 4 years, because you have to make a commitment that you'll stay in the military for 4 years after you graduate. Well, this was when Vietnam was going on. he wasn't really excited, and neither was mother or my daddy either. So he made it 2 years and then came on back home. I didn't pay any attention to it. I was who I was, and I treated everybody the same. You know, I didn't care if they were 12 or 20. Treated everybody the same with respect. And I think one of the things that Sam was so enthralled with is the old Little League field was where the parking lot at the end of the school, the high school is up there now. And that's where the Little League field was. And we were playing Little League, and I was a little bit big for my age. I was very big for my age. And I would hit the ball all the way to the Chevron station across the road. And they thought the younger guys thought that was the greatest thing in the world. I did play baseball and football, no basketball.
Were either of your teams ever good in high school?
I guess the best football team we had was, I guess maybe my sophomore year. And we had some really, really good players. I mean, we did. And I remember even to this day thinking back, we're going to be good. We're going to be really good this year. But it just didn't work out that way. Just didn't work out that way. And that would have been what I would have anticipated to have been our best team. But I love Coach Stanley to death. He was my coach for the first 3 years I played. Loved him to death. Would go over to his house. He was Ed's father. So over to their house on Saturday morning, and their mother had cooked big lunch, and we would sit in there and eat lunch and watch the tape of the game the night before. So it was a good time.
You said your senior year y'all went 0-10,
Mm-hmm.
yet you were still recruited
I know.
by LSU and Ole Miss at least, maybe more. How did they know about you if you were on such a low achieving
I got
team?
recruited by about 150 schools. And word gets around. And the only one that I talked to on the phone regularly was Ole Miss. They would call, and LSU. They would call almost every night. Didn't hear anything from any of the rest of them, so I thought, well, they're not interested. And then I found out after the season was over, I hadn't been getting my mail. They brought a big old box of letters in there from these other schools, and well, maybe somebody does want me.
Did you play baseball at Ole Miss?
Oh, 1 year. 1 year I did. And I decided pretty quickly you can't do both. Because baseball season ran while spring football was going. And you just can't do both. Can't do both. But I loved baseball. I did. It just came really easy to me. So I guess football too. I've got 3 grown children, 2 girls and a boy. My son, I married his mom when he was 5 years old. First time I ever met him, he had a baseball in his hand. And he used to stand in the backyard and bounce a tennis ball off the back of the house till I would just go out there and say, would you please quit? But I like to tell people he and I grew up together. I was his little league coach, and we had fun, and we played and had a big time. And he was a very good baseball player. He went to ICC, and he went to Southeast Louisiana to play down there. Now my other grandkids, my other kids, girls, and they had no interest in anything like that. Now my grandkids, I've got 4 grandkids. One's in Biloxi. Matter of fact, my grandson, he'll be coming to Ole Miss this fall. He's not really interested in sports. He made a perfect score on his ACT, which that's fine. That's great. That's wonderful. So, but then my 2 grandkids that live in Tupelo. My granddaughter Kate, she's 11, and she plays tennis competitively. And then there's my grandson Jack, who is just a sack of hell. He loves to play any sport you got, and I've always told him, I said, Pop doesn't care what you do. I don't care what you do, but please don't play football. Please don't play football. And he said, I'm not. I'm baseball and golf. His daddy's a big golfer, so. But yeah, that's my crew. That's my crew.
Do you still live in Ripley?
No,
Okay.
no. I got divorced, 10 or 11 years ago. And I moved back to New Albany and did that.
What did you end up doing, since you didn't go into coaching? What did you end up doing?
Just getting a job was the main thing. The first job I had when I got out of school, I worked for Ford Motor Company in Memphis. And it was a difficult and challenging time in the 1980s for dealerships and all. So we spent most of our time driving around locking up dealerships for not paying Ford for their cars and trucks. I didn't do that long. I got ready to come home, and I moved back to New Albany and met my future wife. We got married, and I went to work for B&B Concrete. I had a plant in Ripley, New Albany, and Holly Springs that I was responsible for. I worked for them for 17 years. And finally realized this is just too physically challenging. I just can't do it. So then I went to work in the insurance business. So, and that's what I'm still doing now. The popularity of youth and younger age baseball has just amazed me in the last few years. And on the weekend at the sportsplex out there, they'll have a Little League baseball tournament, and there'll be 1,000 people there. And it's just remarkable how good it is. And I got a feeling that my grandson will be out there when he gets old enough to do it. So, but I'm proud of it. I really am proud of it. I guess one of my best friends, the basketball player, Tommy Gray. Shortly after I moved back to New Albany, I was coming out of Stokes, and I saw him walking up and changed a bit, and I told him, I said, hey, you gonna speak to me? And he hit me in the chest and almost knocked me down. And he lives in Atlanta, and he will text me about every 2 weeks. How you doing, brother? Every time he comes through town, we'll get together. So Tommy was a really, really good friend. I had friends. John Panel played football. Shelby Ladner. Shelby played baseball, I think, 1 year. And there was James Daniel and some of those people, but weren't really athletically aggressive.
Y'all's basketball team was pretty good when you were in high school, weren't they?
Actually won the state championship. Coach Childers, it's his first year to come here. And they ended the regular season 13-13. And then went to the district on it and all that. Didn't lose another game. Won the state title. So, and Tommy was the point guard for that team. I remember me and James Daniel driving down there, and just acting crazy. We get to the game, and New Albany had a big crowd, really big crowd. And I just remember basketball, it was just, when you got to that level of competition, all the games were just so close. I mean, just nail biters. And I remember it was just really tense, but I was so happy they won. So they had Tommy, Henry Robinson, Orzel Strickland. I can't really remember who the other two were. Yeah, but Orzel and Henry Robinson, I remember them, we were all friends the same age, as was Tommy.
Was that the team with Johnny Payton?
No, Johnny came after us.
It was after that.
Johnny came after us. I saw him not too long ago. He was talking about, man, we used to listen to y'all's games on every Friday night. I said, be over at my grandma's, we listened. He said, and all it was Jay Bailey, Jay Bailey, Jay Bailey. And I said, well, believe it or not, I was at Ole Miss when y'all were playing, and it was Johnny Payton, Johnny Payton, Johnny Payton. I said, I'm proud of y'all. I was proud of my old hometown. And they were really, really good, really good. So, but yeah, it was great.
Now, did you ever go to the Ingomar basketball games?
Occasionally. I wasn't. I don't think I was real welcome down there, but it's. I went to a few.
Why do you think you weren't welcome there?
Because I dated some girls from Ingomar.
Enough said.
Being honest about it. I mean, being honest about it. We used to play Ripley in the first game every year, and they would wind up winning more times than not. But I remember my freshman year, Ripley was up 6-0 in the fourth quarter, and they had to punt. Charles Kitchens was our punt returner, and Charles caught the punt and was returning it. And I remember it got down to the very last Ripley player, and it was James Story of all people. And I actually blocked him, and Charles scored, and we won the game 7-6. James Story was at Ole Miss when I was there, and he never let me forget that. Never let me forget that. I can't believe I let you block me. But yeah, it was a strange thing.
I think that rivalry still stands.
I think it does too, and I hope it does. I think it should. Rivalries like that are great for sports at any level of sports. They're great. They're one of the things that keep interest up. You know, when people in college football has gotten so expensive for the average fan to go to, and especially when you take into consideration you've got the best seat in the house sitting on your couch in the air conditioning. It's great flat screen TV, HD. You can see things from sitting on your couch that you can't see sitting in the stadium. It's just getting, for guys my age, it's getting to be sort of a hassle. But I still go for my daughter, Mary Allen, and her husband. Mary Allen and I used to go to every Ole Miss game together from the time she was 8 years old. And she's always been my little Ole Miss girl. And we still, she lives in Collierville, Olive Branch now, but I still meet her and her husband every Saturday. They get in the truck with me since I've got a parking pass. We go park, watch the ball game, have a great time. So I don't know, but it's getting to the point where now I think I'm getting just a little bit too old for that. I've actually had people come up and say, Jay Bailey. Look at me, who are you? Of course, my bald head makes it different now. I look a lot different than I used to. But yeah, there'll be people who'll call me out now. I just don't have a clue who they are, but I'm always nice and respectful. This town has given me a lot. It has given me a lot, and the people in this town have given me a lot. And I'm very happy to say that I'm from here, and anytime I meet somebody that I know, I'm going to speak. I don't care what happens, what they say. I'm going to speak, and I'm proud to say that. The first day of practice, when I was coming in as a freshman, we used to practice 3 times a day. And the first practice was before the sun even came up. We'd leave our dressing room and we'd walk under Vaught Hemingway Stadium to get to our practice field. And that first morning, I heard this man screaming to the top of his lungs with a Cajun accent to it, called us every name you could possibly think of. How dare you walk on my field and all this kind of stuff. And that happened to be my position coach. He was tough. He was mean. I mean, he was a tough guy.
Who was he?
Coach Tony Masita. Tony Masita, and sort of bow-legged, but he was a Cajun through and through, 100%. And but he'd be hard on us, you know, during practice like that. But you was welcome to come out to his pond and fish anytime you wanted to, as long as you weren't missing class. So we did that.
Who was y'all's head football coach?
My first year it was Ken Cooper, and then Steve Sloan came after that. So I only played for Coach Cooper that 1 year. And Coach Sloan came, and I think all the Ole Miss fans were really excited about it. Most of us players weren't really too excited about it. He just wasn't the kind of coach that we had always grown up with, that would grab your face mask and chew you out and all that. He didn't do that, and that's probably why he didn't last there very long.
Who was your baseball coach at Ole Miss the year you played?
Jake Gibbs. Jake Gibbs, yeah. My mama loved him. She loved him. And when I was getting recruited, we were in the athletic dorm cafeteria. And Mother and I were sitting there, and I saw Coach Gibbs walk in the back, and I thought, do I tell her or not? And I didn't tell her. Anyway, he came walking up to the table. He said, "Hey, Jay, how you doing? Is this your mom?" I said, "Yes, sir, it is." My mama dumped her whole plate of spaghetti in her mouth. Oh, God, that was the funniest thing in the world. Just embarrassed her to death. But yeah, that was that was an interesting part. But she loved Jake. And Jake was a great guy. He was a great guy. He was fun to play for. Talking about high school team being 0-10, you know, so how do you get a scholarship from that? I don't know how this all worked out, but I was a high school parade All-American, won all these awards and everything. I never knew any of that, never watched me. I never knew any of that, and I still don't know sure how that happened. I think my uncle may have had something to do with that, sending film and all this kind of stuff.
Who was your uncle?
Don Hobson. And, I think that he played in New Albany a couple of years. So they wound up living in Tupelo.
Where did he get film of you?
He'd just come get it from the school, get a copy from the school. So anytime I ever had a problem, Uncle Don was my go-to. He was my go. If I got myself in trouble, I'd go to him. He'd work it out, get it out. If I didn't know what to do about something, I'd talk to him rather than talking to my own daddy about it, because Daddy's view was very slanted on there. But Don was great, and my Tommy Lou was my aunt's name, but everybody called her Aunt Bloss. She grew up here in New Albany. And, they were good people, and both of them had passed, and they were good people. That's one thing I noticed. It seems like the older I get, the more folks pass away. I guess my sister told me, said, "Well, it's only going to get worse." Yeah, I guess so. One thing about Coach Vaught I do remember, and when I signed my scholarship at my house, at my parents' house, when I signed my scholarship, I looked over and side, and the athletic director's signature was Johnny Vaught. And I thought, man, I'm going to hang on to that the rest of my life. He was a great coach and great man. Great man.